Host Dan Contreras back again for the Dr. Dan Show here at the infamous, the well-known Heritage Cultural Center here in downtown Oxnard on 5th Street, the old Bank of Levy. And I have a very special guest this time again, Mr. Ben Saiz. He's a kind of an old-timer like me, but he's been around, and he's originally from East LA, but he's been in our county, how long? Oh, 40 years.
40 years.
40 years. He goes way back. Presently, what are you?
I'm an associate professor at Ventura College.
Mm-hmm. And we do have a commonality as far as we both worked in corrections for the longest. Well, you worked longer, I think.
Yes.
What was it, adult or juvenile?
Juvenile.
Juvenile. As a counselor too?
I started off as a group supervisor, counselor, and then parole officer 1, and then parole officer 2.
Wow. In the streets.
In the streets.
Right.
I worked in LA County, San Bernardino County, Ventura County, Santa Barbara County, and San Luis Obispo.
Interesting. So you are a people person. You've been working with young people particularly.
Yes.
And as an associate professor, you're working with young people again. They're just starting off in college, Ventura College, right?
Yes.
And, but overall, I mean, at your age, I mean, you're retired yet you're still going, which is great. And what's kind of your motive for?
I retired early, and when you talk to people who continue to work without a goal or an end in sight, it makes it difficult to know when to leave. And sometimes it's better to, in my case, I'd rather leave sooner than later. And time is more valuable than the money. And you also have to have something else to do after you retire. And I think that's what scares a lot of people. They don't know what to do. They think they're going to just
Fish every day.
Fish every day, and after a while but there's nothing worthwhile in terms of serving your community, serving other people, using your time in a constructive manner. And so the money, your retirement, they always say that if you retire, for every year you retire early, you add 5 years to your life.
Wow. Theoretically.
And a lot of this information is based on life insurance policies that big bankers use to determine, what do you pay a month for your life insurance, whether it's term life or whole life or those kind of things. I don't understand all of it, but I do know that stress, as you know, factors in on that.
Main primary factor.
Yes.
So in terms of what you're doing presently, let's start back in the day. I mean, you graduated in East LA, one of the high schools, and then...
No.
Oh, no?
No, I'm a high school dropout.
Oh, my God.
Yeah.
Never thought that.
Oh, yeah. No, nobody does, and I used to be real ashamed about being a high school dropout. I was in juvenile hall. I used to run with gangs in East LA, and I left my home when I was about 16. I lived in the streets, in cars and garages, and ran with the gangs. They finally caught up with me. I went to juvenile hall, and I'm probably one of the few parole officers who've been on, ever went to the California Youth Authority themselves.
And you worked there.
And I worked there.
Subsequently.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I got off parole when I was 21 from the Youth Authority. Sergio Gomez was my parole officer, who was later on a parole board member. And I finished my high school diploma when I was incarcerated. My mother used to tell me, or they would ask her, where's Benny? Because that's what they used to call me. Where's Benny? And she would say, oh, he's in school. And then after about a year later, they asked her again. She said, oh, he's in jail. And the lady says, oh, Yale? Well, that's a beautiful school, So I come home. They says, how was Yale? And I said, fine.
Very good. Very good. Excellent point. So once you're 21 or so, you straighten your life out somewhat?
No,
not yet.
No. When you get out, you're full of poison.
Yeah. Okay. Anger issues.
You got muscles. You've been lifting weights, and then in all that time, you're always figuring about the paybacks. all these guys that did you wrong, and you want to go back and pay them back. And when I got out, actually, when I got out, I belonged to a car club in East LA, and actually it was a gang on wheels, really.
Right.
And then two of my friends got accepted to Cal State Northridge, but I was very provincial in not leaving the neighborhood. I had never left East LA except for those bus rides to to Ontario, and so they said, we have to be over here by 5 o'clock. I was living in Montebello. I was working. I was tired of the life I was living.
Mm-hmm.
I went to East LA College, and I found out all the classes I took were not transferable. So then, but they knew that I wanted to go to school, and they said, we got one opening left, and if you get here by 5, you can get in. You need a 2.5 GPA minimum for EOP, and I said, well, I got that. So they gave me the directions how to get to Northridge. So I'm driving, and this is a guy who's never been out past downtown LA. I'm driving, and I find it's getting late, and I called, and I said, Tiny was 6'5". I said, Tiny, I'm lost. and I said, where you at? I said, I'm by the Holiday Inn. He said, there's no Holiday around here. Yeah, by the beach. I wound up over Ventura trying to find the valley.
Wow.
That's how silly it was. And that was my foray into education, higher education.
In your beginning education, because you're the so-called typical young Chicano that was raised in the hood, and you got involved in gangs, and yet you didn't get educated until you actually you were incarcerated. You got your high school diploma. Were there factors that made you? Why did you want to get educated before? Why was education for school just a negative for you?
It wasn't negative. I played sports, football.
While you were running with the gang too?
Yeah.
Wow.
Oh, we had some guys that were athletes. Back in the day, there was a fellow by the name of Ruben Navarro. They used to call him Jemima because he was dark, and but he was a track star, and he was a lightweight boxing champion. He was called the Maravilla Kid, and he was good in the ring, but he wasn't good in the streets. You know what I mean? So we had a fellow by the name of Pepe Villanueva. He got recruited by UCLA to play halfback out of Garfield High School. That's the high school I went to.
Right.
Yeah, or dropped out of in the 12th grade. And he was a 500 hitter. He was the third leading scorer in the city. He got recruited to go play for UCLA, but it was the drugs and the gangs that didn't let him get past it, So I wasn't as big as those guys or as fast as those guys, but Pepe was one of those guys that he could whip somebody. He could whip 3 dudes at a time, and I seen him do it. He got somebody, got messed with his girl. He beat up 2 of the guys. One guy ran across the street. As he's running after the guy, a car comes by, hits Pepe. He gets up, catches the guy, and beats him up. So I'm thinking, leave him alone,
Okay. So is there any moment for you that you really, what would be the right word? Not crystallized, but just came to a point where what point is that?
When I got stabbed.
Ooh.
I got stabbed on both sides, and I didn't know the guy had a knife. We were fighting, and it was a Halloween night, and this guy had stabbed a guy named Little Rudy, and stuck him in the bathtub, and he was bleeding. He knocked the shower curtain into the bathtub, and Rudy's in there, and the blood was filling up on the
Tub.
Yeah, on the curtain.
On the curtain.
So it wasn't draining. And we looked, and someone said, hey, they stabbed Little Rudy. And so I'm walking in, and this guy's walking, that's him. And I didn't see nothing in his hand because it was kind of dark. So I caught him, and he stuck me, but I didn't feel it right away. And later on, I can't tell you what happened to the guy because, anyways, later on, I had to get stitches, and then I realized this side was paralyzed. I couldn't move.
Wow.
For a month. And you know what my concern was? That I couldn't defend myself. So I hid out for a month, and I said, this is it. I'm done. Yeah.
It was horrible. Okay. Hi, we're back again at the Dr. Dan Show with Ben Saiz. And we're talking about, actually Ben's a peace officer these days, but still, but back in the day, he was in the streets and doing some bad things, and thank God he recouped, he got himself together. But one thing I wanted to stress, and I think Ben would agree, that like when I worked in corrections, is that the common problem seemed to be, and as in Ben's case, was substance abuse and physical, and it could be even sexual abuse, emotional abuse, that occurred in a lot of these hardcore gang members. That seemed to be the common denominator that made them, or at least they use that as a reason to be negative, to be in the street life. And what do you think about that, as far as generally true, at least?
You know, every time, we go into homes, and there's been domestic violence with mostly the girls getting the short end of it.
Right.
And I asked my class too, because when I'm teaching class, I said, I said, there's always cases, and invariably, and these are the questions I asked the class. Do you know somebody who's used drugs, or is using drugs? And the drugs we're talking about are not weed anymore. That used to be the taboo. But it's, crack or meth or heroin. And invariably they know somebody, and of course it ruins people's lives. And then we talk about, the violence in the home. And one of the questions I ask is, after the guy beats up the girl, and I used to tell the girls, get a restraining order, and they wouldn't. And you know what the answer was?
What was it?
What do you think?
Well, in a lot of cases, I love him, or
that's it. And the whole class says that, and it's like, 35 students, but I love him. And,
oh my God.
And I said, exactly. I said, okay, then either you're either a sadist or a masochist, one or the other, or you're part of that vicious. You get hooked up in there, and it's not a healthy relationship. And then we get into the cultural aspect of it, because they tell us that. I ask them, is it okay for little boys to cry in a traditional Mexican family? No, it's okay. And I said, why not? Well, if they cry, they're what? Little
weak.
They're weak, or little sissies, or little girls. And I said, that's exactly. And so we put that stress on them from they're that little. And so you can take a whipping and not show emotion. And then I asked them, is it okay for little girls, if they're wearing dresses, to climb up trees? No. I said, why not? Either because they're tomboys or because they're going to see their underwear. I said, that's pretty standard. And so we have already programmed behavior that already dictates how we're going to behave. I told them I almost cried one time, but I sucked the tear back because got to man up. But you have to use a little humor when you're trying to get the message across to.
What's the name of the class you actually teach?
I teach. I give the same message in all my classes. I teach History 12 with a Chicano focus. I teach Introduction to Chicano Studies and Latin American History. So any of those three classes, or any time I get a chance to put that in there, I do, just to bring it to the attention, because domestic violence is bad. And you can't discipline your children when you're angry.
Oh, yes, very good point.
And a lot of the stuff, I wish they would give us a little time out. Stanley, go stand in the corner. You give your time out. Not us. Get the big belt and bam, 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 and
And you're stunned.
Yeah. And then you expect, and no one ever teaches how to be good parents. So and generation after, it just continues. So someone has to break that cycle.
How could that be? How possibly could that happen, you think? What would need to be done?
Parenting classes, examples. Sometimes you have to, even acting, when you bring it to the forefront. Sometimes and I don't know, if I had the answer, I'd tell you. I don't have the answer, but people have to keep on trying. Mm-hmm. It's like researching cures for cancer or any other diseases, and you can call that a social disease. So you have to use whatever expertise is out there, whether it's cultural, whether it's books, or whether it's demonstrations or proper ways to do that. And easier said than done,
Yes, yeah,
you know?
definitely.
It's tough.
A lot of cultural barriers. Today, there's gang violence going on as we speak.
Mhm.
At this very second, probably. There might be
Sure.
something going on. There's things going on in the east side in Colonia. There's things on the south side, and from what I know, it's no less in the south side. They're just as bad as the Colonia boys. Now, it used to be, the Colonia boys. No, the south side, deep south side near the old Lyric Street. They're just as vicious, as vicious when they're doing their thing. And I'm just trying to think, as far as not intermediate, but well, to mediate things. I don't know. What would you think could be done?
Well, one of the reasons why they took me out of Ventura School as a youth counselor, I promoted to a parole officer, and they sent me to East LA, and I was working with the gang violence reduction program.
Mm.
And one of the things they did was we were very non-traditional in the sense that we would get the leaders of the different neighborhoods, have them resolve their differences with the main guys, but we needed money, and fortunately they gave us a small budget to work with. So you wind up paying, we call them consultants, and they would, you pay them, and then you give them because who's going to hire these guys? Very few people. But they carry a lot of prestige in our neighborhood. If they say, hey, back off, hey, we got something coming because, and we'd have money for camping trips or barbecues or stuff, or, during Christmas time or Thanksgiving time, you could organize toys or food baskets. And
Okay. Just to clarify, what was being done, say you had a group of 50 guys represent, you were able to pick one or two guys that would be like the actual gang members, but they were hired to work as
consultants. The actual leaders that held the respect of the group.
Right.
And some of them weren't the cleanest guys. You got guys still, doing stuff, but was it worth it? Especially when we had a high level of homicides in that area. The proof is in the pudding, and that is that homicides went down. And I still have the old statistics from that time. I still have the old plan from that time, and it's just a matter of sometimes and of course you have to work with law enforcement as well. They have to understand that it's they're used to hooking and booking, and we're used to negotiating and intervening. So and as you know, it's trust, and it's not signing a contract. It's your word.
As they say, palabra.
That's it. It's la palabra.
I did that myself with one guy. It was a problem we had in the jail, right? I said, I want palabra, man, that you won't. And he wouldn't give it because he knew he couldn't come through. So there I knew for sure what's going on. That's how you can find out. And then the latest development has been, seems to be, or it is, in fact, some things that have happened in Colonia is the Mexicano. It's been here for a while, but they're developing their own gang, and they're against the Pocho, the Chicano gang members, and there's been some killings there, particularly over the drug thing. And I don't know, because one of the killings they had, everybody said, it was a Paula Street gang or some other gang. No, it was a Mexicano that blew away this Pocho guy. It was with his girlfriend there on Colonia Road or one of the streets, and wow. So there's, that seems to be, are you aware of that development?
No.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
But it doesn't surprise me.
Yeah.
People get tired of being picked on.
Right. It's kind of like 18th Street. 18th was the same thing.
Yeah. Yeah. And poverty is one, and if people aren't hiring, then you go to business where you don't pay taxes. And you can only sell so many oranges and flowers in the corners and that. Young guys and young girls need jobs. In the old days, kids could work a job at McDonald's or Jack in the Box. Not now. Uh, the adults are taking 2 and 3 jobs because they're trying to pay rent, food, clothes for the kids to go to school. You know, it's rough.
A shrinking market.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, you see, I didn't know what do you call the people that go into a dumpsters? Dumpster diving. Dumpster diving.
DD.
One of the students tells me, I said, girls always have shoes, I said, how many pairs of shoes do you have? And I said, we're consumers, and she says, and some of the girls have, 20 pairs of shoes or 15 pairs of shoes, and she says, I only have 1 pair of shoes, the ones I'm wearing, they were tennis shoes. He says, my dad takes me when I was little dumpster diving. He put me in the dumpster, and I'm thinking, what's that? And whatever we can get out of there, we take.
Utilize.
And I'm thinking, but I've seen it where ladies, they'll get up early in the morning, go get plastic bottles and aluminum cans and go sell it. And she says, I want, and her daughter was in college, I'm paying for my daughter's books, her clothing, because I don't want her to want anything. I want her to have everything else like the rest of them. And this is my obligation as a parent to help her. That was one. And the other one was she had a real nice daughter and a knucklehead son. And the knucklehead son was a loser. The daughter, and she was a janitor for Cal State Northridge. She says, I clean those rooms because I want not only my daughter, but for the other students to have a nice place to study and to learn. And I'm proud to do what I do.
Great.
How humble.
Yeah.
And most people, given the opportunity, that's what we need. The community needs opportunities to work. Even if it's just minimum wage for the kids to buy clothes or something, rather than, dealing or get posting up on waiting to see what gang is running up on you, or, and usually they want you to jump the wrong people.
And then, for me anyway, the other factor is the availability of drugs and substance abuse. It's horrible. I mean,
It is.
amongst the young.
It is.
I mean,
It is. And
14, 15 years old, and they're doing it daily, or as much as they can anyway. Anyway, we're running out of time, but
Okay.
thank you for a little input, my little input, and we got a story there, and I mean, there's things we're gonna have to really work on. I still work in the communities, you do too, right? And I don't know, the job is not complete, by no means.
No.
But thank you, audience, for checking out the show, and we'll see you again soon.